There are so many applications of statistics in the real world. My presentation will hardly cover all of them. So I just want to let you know. So Anna reached out to me and told me that I need to talk about how statistics is used in the real world. And as I mentioned, there are so many applications of statistics. There is no way that I'm going to fit in all the applications in today's presentation. So I must have missed out some very important ones here. And since I work for Eli Lilly and Company, I thought it would be good for me to talk a little bit about what statisticians do in a pharmaceutical company. So before I begin, I just want to say one thing. This is what I think of statistics. This is a line from my favorite Bengali song, and this says, Jana Maje Ajanare Korechi Shantan. What it means is, I've searched for the unknown among the known. And that's what statisticians do. They use data, which is known, to estimate things that are not known to us. And this line is by the famous Nobel laureate poet Rabindranath Tagore. So dictionary.com defines statistics as a science that deals with the collection, classification, analysis, and interpretation of numerical facts or data using mathematical theories of probability. And note that I highlighted the word data because it also means statistics. So statistics can be used in two different ways. So on the one hand, it means the science of analysis of data, and statistics also mean data themselves. So statisticians look for patterns in data to see what we can do to interpret the data. And what's most exciting about data is there is so much variability, and whenever we want to understand something that's unknown, there's a lot of uncertainty involved in that. So that's what makes the science of statistics so exciting. So when I used to live in Calcutta in India a long time ago, when I used to wake up in the morning, the first thing I did was look outside the window and see, okay, is it sunshine? Is there sunshine? Is it like raining or is it cloudy? How does the day look like? But these days, I just get up in the morning and look at my cell phone and see, okay, how's the day going to look like in terms of the weather? So ever wondered how they make these predictions on what the temperatures are going to be throughout the day or through the next few days? It's all based on statistical models. So they use data from the past as well as the present to show how the forecast is going to look like. And there is a group of statisticians who are working hard on creating these models and to forecast the data. Now, how we use this data could be different from person to person. I may just want to know the weather forecast to understand how I'm going to dress today. Whether I should dress warmly or should I dress light. But this is very important information for people who are working in the aviation department, for example. They want to check, okay, how should I route my flights? Which are the places I should avoid, and so on. These forecasts could be used even by a landscaper to determine how to plan their business. So there are various methods that could be used in analyzing this kind of data. So forecasting is also used in politics, and it's much more difficult to forecast political data than weather data. That's because the source of data are so different. In politics, the sources of data are human beings, which are much more volatile than weather. So in terms of interpreting political data, we have to use much more caution than we could use in weather data. Here is another example of how the political preferences of individuals have changed over the last few decades. So what I would say is I would be much more comfortable using political data retrospectively rather than prospectively. Instead of forecasting, I would look at what happened in the past. So talking about volatility, here's another application of statistics where things are very volatile. That is the stock market. And there is a wealth of information that you can gain in today's world just by surfing the internet. So as I was looking at the stocks from Eli Lilly, when I looked at the data from the last, I don't know if this points, but if I looked at the data from the last 1 month, it looked green because it changed, like the stock prices increased over time. When I looked at the data over the last 6 months, it's showing red because the prices decreased over time. So now, how to invest in stocks is something that we decide depending on data, but we should not always depend on intrinsic data, but also on extrinsic factors, like what are the factors influencing the stock market. By extrinsic factors, I didn't really mean space, but statistics is also used in space research. And they have also a lot of stats reports on space data, and unfortunately, when I looked at some of their reports, I could hardly understand what they were talking about. So it's for a good reason that I'm not a rocket scientist. So coming back to more worldly things, here are some sports statistics, and what you see here is how one team plays versus another. And I don't know really a lot about sports statistics, but what people can do is, with these statistics, they can see, okay, is there more chance of one team winning versus another team? Or they can also use individual player stats to determine how they're going to pay some players and so on. So stats is used a lot in sports in different ways. Look at these stats on the serving directions of Davenport. If I were to play against her, if I looked at this data from her previous match, I would actually decide, okay, do I need to practice my forehand better? Do I need to practice my backhand better? Where should I place myself on the court? But again, this data could be useful if it's recent data, but if it's not recent data, then she could have evolved over time her playing tactics, and it might not be as useful. And here is another kind of statistics on Americans' interest in Olympics. And this could help people who are maybe in the advertising industry. They would get an estimate of what's the audience that they would reach out to. So there are different kinds of statistics which are used in different ways. Social media. There is a wealth of information that we can get from social media. Every time you click on some of these emoticons, when you see a picture or a post, information is being collected on you. So let's say I look at these stats on a photo that I posted. What this would tell me is most people liked or loved the picture, but there are some people who are angry or sad about it. So that's what I would conclude if I looked at these stats. I don't use Twitter, but I figured that there's a lot that you could learn about the content that you post on Twitter. So they have content in analytics, they have keyword analytics, they have hashtag analytics, and follower analytics, influencer, competitor, all kinds of things. Unfortunately, I don't use Twitter, so I don't know how they do all that and how people use this information. But they're all collecting information and they're trying to see what people do with it. For shopping and other leisurely activities, we often look at Amazon for deciding what products to buy. So we look at the review stats and we decide, okay, should I go with this product versus that product, and so on. And Amazon also collects stats on us to determine, okay, who are the people who are spending on things most? Are the Prime members spending most? Are the non-Prime members spending most? And so on. Every time I book a hotel, I look at TripAdvisor. I look at these stats on hotels to decide on which hotel to choose. And they also segment the reviewers by females or males or couples or families and so on. So if you're traveling with a family, you should look at the family stats to see if the reviews are different from what they are normally. If you're a blogger, you might be interested in seeing who are the people who are visiting your blogs, and Google Analytics provides a lot of information on that. How much time do I have? Sorry. Good. Another field of applications is in actual science, where insurance companies need to determine what's the amount that one should pay on a plan, and they use statistics, they use demographic factors as gender or location or age and so on to make models, make statistical models, and then show people, okay, this is how much you need to pay. So the statistical models are what are used to provide quotes on insurance. So statistics are used a lot in healthcare industry as well. So if you're interested in knowing healthcare expenditures to determine which segments of the population need more medical aid and so on, we could look at stats from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If you're interested in finding, okay, how many overdose deaths happened involving opioids, you could look at stats from the Center for Disease Control. If you wanted to know what are the natural products which are used most by US adults, you could probably look at some stats from the National Institute of Health. So stats is used a lot in healthcare industry. So I consider pharmaceuticals as part of the healthcare industry as well. There are two big applications of stats in a pharmaceutical company. One is in drug development, the other is in business analytics. So in drug development, the first thing that we want to do is look at candidate selection. So we determine which are the molecules that we should look at first to determine if those should be tested in humans. Once that's determined, we want to know, okay, what kind of clinical trials should be designed? So as statisticians, we have to work with physicians to design clinical trials, which are actually studies on human subjects. And then we look at safety and efficacy data, and if those look good, then we decide whether to market the molecule or not. And if we want to market the molecule, we have to gain regulatory approval from agencies like FDA or EMA and so on. And we also conduct post-marketing studies after the drug is marketed. In business analytics, what we do is look at market researches to understand like insights, customer insights on certain products that we sell. We also analyze, sales data to understand, okay, which are the compounds that are doing great versus which are the compounds that are not, and what's the business impact. So in phase one, so clinical trials are often divided into 4 phases. In phase one, what we try to understand is whether a patient should take the drug in the morning or in the evening, how frequently they should take it, whether they should inject the drug, whether they should take it by mouth. All these kinds of things are determined in the first phase of clinical trials. In the second phase, what we want to know is which is the dose that is optimal for patients, that is not causing too many adverse events, but at the same time generating the desired effect. In the third phase, the clinical trials are usually much larger. All we want to do here is prove that the drug is efficacious and safe, and we want to generate enough information to convince the regulatory agencies about the benefits and risks of the drug. And after the drug is marketed, we collect real-world evidence from the patients in the real world, because in clinical trials in the phase 3, they're in a very controlled setting, so we look for more homogeneous patients, whereas when we collect data from the real world, they're not so homogeneous, and there could be a lot more variation in real world data. So in business analytics, what we want to see is what are the factors that influence prescribers to choose one drug versus another. So market researches are conducted to determine that. We also look at sales data to understand which are the compounds that are having most business impact, which are the compounds that are selling most and doing a good return of investment for the company. So those were the few things about pharmaceutical stats, and the future of statistics lie in predictive analytics, and not only predictive analytics, but also what they call prescriptive analytics. By prescriptive analytics, what we mean is they want to use data to determine how we can influence others to make some decisions. Not only look at what will happen in the future, but how we can impact the future. So that's where statistics is going next. So just to summarize all that I presented, stats has a wide gamut of applications in sciences as well as in arts. Collection of data has become so easy these days from so many different sources that it has led to what we call the big data revolution. And that's what makes us, it really needs, there is a real need for analysis and interpretation of data, because all this data is out there. And people use data in different ways, and we make different decisions based on data, and statistics is a way to consolidate information that we can use to make better decisions. So I just want to say thank you again, and I was able to find some interesting stats on the school, but unfortunately my son is only 2 years old, so I don't know a lot about choosing schools, but all I have heard is good things about Carmel High School. So, and I'm sure these data support that. So I'll leave you with a final quote that I like a lot about stats. In God we trust, all others must bring data. Thank you.